I have some scary tales for you tonight. The first one is a local tale. Then I'm going to take you on the wings of the night down to the low country of South Carolina. But first, when you see apples in eastern Tennessee, you might be unlucky to find a ghost there as well. Everyone knows that the oldest apple tree in a mountain holler is haunted. People say that there is one particular tree that you should avoid during the time that the apples ripen and fall from the tree. Why? This one particular tree growls at people. And I'm going to tell you how this came about. It's a real creepy story. Years and years ago, it was about this time, round about Halloween. Actually, it was this time of October. There was a family living in a cabin in an old holler in eastern Tennessee. Sud was entertaining the kids just before Sunday dinner. They had the preacher over. Now, Sud Hewlett was a big, handsome, blonde man, and he had this huge mouth. He liked to make faces at people, and whomever he made faces at, why, they had to laugh or he would never, ever stop. He made faces right through breakfast and Sunday school and church, just right on unless you finally laughed, and then he would stop. On this particular Sunday, Sud was entertaining the kids right before Sunday dinner. They had the preacher over. Now, Sud sat down at his own table, nodded to the clergyman, didn't say a word, but he looked right at him. And also in that room were Lori and Lisa. They were sister twins, and they laughed at everything that happened, no matter what it was. If one laughed, the other one laughed. And Sud was really entertaining this Sunday. He was pulling faces at them, and they were just cutting up the rug laughing. Well, let's get back to the preacher. Sud sat down, and he took a big red apple. Now, Sud Hewlett was known for eating big, ripe apples. He said a horse told him how to eat them, and he would eat them one bite after another, the seeds, the core, the stem, until everything was gone. Then he would pull his mouth around in a little crooked smile and look off into the distance until you laughed. So the preacher's sitting here, and he's got his eye on Sud. Sud takes that big red apple in his hand, and he begins to wind up his arm like a windmill, turning round and round. And then all of a sudden, he brings that apple up to his chest, and he looks at the preacher like a goose. Sud is playing baseball, and the preacher is home plate. Preacher furrows up his brow a little bit. He's not quite sure about this game. So Sud all of a sudden jumps up from his seat and takes his arm in a wide overhead arc like he's playing baseball. Lisa and Laurie, they twitter. The preacher frowns a little bit more. But Sud, he brings his arm down halfway, like he's going to throw it at the preacher's face. The preacher doesn't like this game of baseball that Sud's playing. And the preacher thinks to himself, what I have to do to get some chicken and a piece of pie after lunch. Because they could all smell that big hen roasting in the oven in the kitchen. You've smelled a roasted chicken, haven't you? That warm, brown, fizzy smell. Preacher was getting mighty hungry. Sud was still playing. He brought that apple up, tossed it into the air. It bounced off of his arm and landed straight up, and it came down, 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 down. He caught it in his mouth, which was big enough to catch an apple in. The girls laughed some more, laughed and carried on. The preacher just shook his head slowly from side to side. Now, Sud made a mistake here. He had practiced this many times, but on this particular day, he made a mistake. He caught that apple in his big, wide mouth, and he bit it in half. The half that he bit fell out of his mouth and plopped into his left hand. He was supposed to catch it like that. However, the rest of the apple lodged back in his throat. It didn't wind up between his teeth where he could get a few more bites at it, but it got stuck backwards in his throat. Sud couldn't even cough. He began turning red, his neck, his cheeks, his forehead. His eyes bulged out like they were going to pop out of his head. He went back and forth in the dining room, crashing into chairs, stumbling. And then all of a sudden, he fell down on his side onto the floor with a big thud. He laid on that rug airless on his side. Unable to catch even a little breath, he turned slowly in place, kicked feebly, time or two with his feet, and he was no longer turning red. He was now turning blue. First bright blue, then dark blue. The girls laughed more and more. Oh, Sud, he was a riot this Sunday. The pastor, having realized at the last moment that Sud was choking, darted from his place on the table, grabbed a good-sized piece of stove wood, ran over to Sud, and whacked him in the back with the stove wood. Sud still couldn't get a breath, and his back was badly bruised. Sud was dead. His wife came in to see what the commotion was. Lisa screamed. Lori screeched like an owl. People always said that Sud's big mouth would get him in trouble, and it did. Now, there was a spot out in the yard that Sud was real particular about. He used to take his chair and set it out there of a summer evening, smoking his pipe and watching the light fade away as the sun dipped down over the hill. That's where they buried him, put up a marker. Sud's wife remarried, and she and her twin girls, they moved to another holler, but a few years after that, she came back to see Sud's spot. The marker was gone, and in its place, there was a young apple tree. The couple that had moved there said they were really sorry to have moved the marker, but it got in the way of the apple tree, and Sud's wife understood. The apple tree was marker enough. Well, I reckon it's just growing right out of his head, she said. The couple nodded. It probably was. Well, of course it was. They had buried Sud with that apple half still stuck back in his throat. And the roots of that young tree had come out through his eye sockets and through the big wide mouth in his skull. The apple tree was growing just fine. One spring, it was covered with blossoms and bees, and later, it bore fruit. Now, the couple and their children who were living there learned quickly right off that it was not a good idea to try and pick an apple off that tree, because when they did, Sud would let out the awfulest growl, and he would moan and he would groan until they brought the apples back and put them down on the ground under the tree. Now, you might think that this is just a tale, But I'm here to tell you that it's the truth. The apples themselves learned how to growl. If you picked an apple and you took it home, put it in a sack or a drawer or a bowl in a day or so, it would start grousing and moaning and groaning, and it wouldn't quit until you took them back. But there was one thing that was worse than this. If you ate the apple, your stomach would growl. And it would growl loudly and clearly for a day or two. And you couldn't sleep, and neither could anybody else unfortunate enough to be within hearing distance. No sleep. Well, when they put the apples back, the birds ate at them, and a horse came along, and he ate a few, but in a few minutes he gave a terrible loud whinny. And he ran off, bucking and kicking and shaking his head, something awful, awful. People who lived near there learned not to take those apples. Now, I want you to know, I'm going to bring you up to the present a little bit. People who would drive down the road would see old apple trees along the road, or maybe back in a holler when they were in blossom, or maybe when the red fruit was ripe and it was on branches, gnarly old branches bent low to the ground. Sometimes those people stop to pick an apple or two. They think it wouldn't mind. Who would know? No one's pruning the apples or keeping them up. It should be okay. But pretty soon they learn not to do that, and the smart ones go away without taking an apple from that tree. They know a ghost when they see one. Now, old abandoned cabins in eastern Tennessee and anywhere along the Appalachians, when people move out and leave them, they eventually fall in. Or perhaps someone comes along and takes them down for the wood, or maybe they burn. And Sud Hewlett's old cabin is gone now, but that old apple tree, it's still up in an overgrown part of that cove. It's still growling away. When visitors come by, they may see that tree, and as they tramp around the place, they will find the old spring head that Sud had on his property, but the cabin's gone, and they may not even know that the cabin is there. Now, my husband and I live up in an old holler in Unicoi County. We live in a community called Flag Pond, and it's a very old and still primitive community. There was once a cabin on our property, which is about, half a mile, I guess, from the interstate. And there's still a gnarly old apple tree up in the cove. And nearby, there's a spring head. Thank you. Now, I promised you a little trip, so we're going to go down to the low country of South Carolina. There were two elderly gentlemen. They were sitting on a metal bench in the White Gardens on the Charleston Battery. And they were discussing the day's news. And one thing that really had them puzzled was news of the death of a young man the night before. Now, this young man was strong and able and fit. And these old guys, they just couldn't figure out what had happened to him. And this is what had happened. George Edmonds was a stevedore down on the docks of the Charleston Harbor. He lived in a tiny little room right off Philadelphia Alley. It was about a block away from the harbor, really convenient for going to work. And he had a roommate. We don't know the roommate's name, but we'll just call him scrawny and miserable, because that's exactly what he was. skinny and complaining, scrawny and miserable, whined day and night. Now, George did most of the work for the two of them. He kind of let Scrawny and Miserable slide a little bit. And that was the only problem he had with Scrawny and Miserable until he really started tuning up with his complaints, moaning and groaning all night long. Oh, my back, it's about broke. Oh, the joints in my fingers and my elbows, they've just done pulled apart. I can't catch a breath. And my poor little old legs, they're going to give out any time now. Oh. Well, one night, Scrawny and Miserable whined on until at 3 a.m., George Edmonds couldn't take one more minute. He had tried plugging his ears with his fingers. He had tried putting a pillow over his head, and still Scrawny and Miserable's moans came right through. He sat up on the side of his cot, looked across the dark room where Scrawny and Miserable was, and said, "If you feel this bad, why don't you just go ahead and die? Call death to come and get you." Scrawny and Miserable figured that's all he had left to do, so he started to call death. Death, death, come on and take me now. What? Asked George. That's not loud enough. You gotta holler louder. Oh, death, oh, me, come and get me, death. Oh, bother, hollered George. You've got to talk louder than that. Look here. And he opened the door and stepped out into the Philadelphia alley. Death, oh, death, come and get me now. Well, the sound had barely died away into the humid, thick Charleston night air when George felt an icy cold hand clamp down on his shoulder. He turned to see a tall figure wrapped in a dark cloak, the cowl pulled over his face. He opened his mouth to scream and fell into the road, dead as a doornail. Now, the autopsy didn't reveal any identifiable reason for George's death. As I said, he was young and fit, just in the prime of his life, had good exercise and weight building every day. There was really no reason that anybody could figure out for his death. And Scrawny and Miserable, deprived of the man who did half of his work, well, he lost his job on the docks, spent the rest of his days in the Charleston poorhouse, and died as miserably as he had lived. The elderly gentleman in the white gardens mused. What a mystery. How is it that the young ones always die and us old buzzards just live on? And that's the story of the two bachelors. Now, we're going to go a little bit southeast of Charleston. We're going down to Beaufort, South Carolina, and then we're going to head east across the Beaufort River to an island called St. Helena. It's the home of the Gullah people. Do any of y'all know about the hag? Raise your hands if you've heard about the hag. How about the boo hag? Yeah? Know about the hag? Well, for those of you who don't know, I'm going to tell you about her so you will know what to watch out for. Now, of a day, the hag is a respectable woman. She could be a teacher. Why, she could even be the preacher's wife. But come nightfall, it's a different story. You see, the hag is a shapeshifter and a witch. And like a witch, she can ride on the littlest, thinnest breeze, the kind that just kind of tickles the leaves on the birch tree. And she can flatten herself out and slip under the door where that little tiny crack is that lets in the air and slip through the window. Now, since we're talking about slipping, I will tell you this little bit of information about the hag. She slips out of her skin every night. She rolls it up, stuffs it under a board in the porch, or maybe she will hide it in the hollow of a tree, and she goes on about her business. Have you ever, during your night's rest, felt like you were floating in the air above your bed? But when you grab the mattress to orient yourself, you're still laying flat in the bed. Now, I told you that she rides the air, but she also rides you. There have been some people that she has ridden all the way to Europe and China and back in one night. And how does this impact on the person that she's riding? Well, if it's you, you gradually get more and more exhausted and thinner and paler until finally you just waste away and die. How can you keep the hag out of your house? Well, there are actually several ways to keep her out. If you live on a river or on a fast-moving creek, you're probably safe because she won't cross running water. She also won't cross salt. So if you put a thin line of salt on that window ledge and in front of that door, she won't come in. You can also lay a broom in front of the door. When the hag sees that, she sits down and she starts to count every one of the straws in the broom until almost dawn, when she has to leave and shift back into her skin. What do you do if the hag lives in your own house? Well, there are a couple of things. When you light a match to start a fire or light a candle, blow that match out. It's got a little burnt piece on the end. Twist it into your hair, and then you should be safe. You can also hide a knife under your bed. And when you feel yourself levitating in the night, don't scream, because she can enter your mouth, suck your breath, and then you'll be dead quick. But reach under that bed and grab that knife real quick, cut off her hand. Whew. The next day, if you're at school and the teacher's there and she's hiding her arm in her shawl, and she says, "I hurt my hand last night. Can somebody help me by writing the lesson on the board?" You know, the hag. Let's say you go to church on a Sunday and the preacher's wife does not extend the right hand of fellowship when passing the peace. There it is, the hag. Now, just to wrap this up, you may be wanting to know how you can kill her and get rid of her for good. Well, you have to know where she's hidden that skin. So look around the house, under the porch, around trees, around bushes. Find that skin and roll it out. cover it with salt, and roll it back, put it where you found it. When she comes back to shift into her skin, being raw meat from her head to her feet, she'll put that skin on, and that salt will scald that raw meat to death. The hag will just shrivel up and die. And now you know how to keep yourself safe from the hag. Thank you.